What if the deepest parts of your mind held not just memories, but echoes of humanity's entire evolutionary past? What if you could physically regress to a primal state and then, impossibly, transform again, all in the pursuit of truth?
It sounds like the stuff of wildest imagination, doesn't it? Yet the sources we're diving into today suggest this isn't merely fantasy, but an astonishing exploration into the very bedrock of our being, driven by an almost spiritual yearning for ultimate understanding.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the source material you've shared to unearth those crucial nuggets of knowledge and insight, leaving you not just well-informed, but perhaps profoundly changed in your perception of reality. Our mission today is to embark on an astounding journey into the unknown, exploring frontiers of truth, where, as this story reveals, anything can truly happen.
Yeah, for this particular deep dive, we're not just dissecting a story, we're stepping inside the mind of a visionary artist and the terrifying, relentless experiments of a brilliant, utterly obsessive scientist. It's a journey that directly challenges our most fundamental assumptions about what it means to be human.
That's right. Today we're unpacking extensive excerpts from Paddy Chayefsky's 1978 novel, Altered States. Now, this isn't just a horror story, though it absolutely has moments of supreme terror that will chill you to the bone. It's not only a love story, though the profound, tumultuous connection between two individuals becomes an unexpected anchor in the face of absolute chaos.
Definitely. At its very core, this is a profound exploration into other states of consciousness and the unimaginable, uncharted kingdoms of the mind. Our sources meticulously detail one young scientist's terrifying experiment to find the very origins of consciousness, pushing the boundaries of what's known about the human body, the mind, and even the fabric of space and time itself.
Our deep dive today aims to help you grasp the core scientific and philosophical questions raised by these radical experiments. We'll navigate complex ideas, surprising discoveries, and intense personal stakes, leaving you with a richer understanding of what it means to be well-informed on such a mind-bending topic.
It's a journey that asks, what if the greatest frontier isn't out in the cosmos, but right here, within us?
So let's begin to unearth this. Before we plunge into the scientific abyss with our protagonist, Edward Jessup, it's worth pausing to consider the remarkable mind behind Altered States. Paddy Chayefsky. Born in the Bronx in 1923, he was a celebrated American dramatist known for his extraordinary output.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine in just 1953 alone, he penned 9-hour-length television plays? That's an incredible testament to his prolific talent.
And his origins as a writer are particularly compelling. His very first dramatic effort, a musical comedy titled No T.O. for Love, was actually written while he was convalescing from wounds suffered as an infantryman near Aachen, Germany during World War II.
Right, it was performed for GIs throughout Europe, so his creative journey truly began in a very visceral, kind of grounding way.
He quickly became renowned for successfully transitioning his TV dramas to motion pictures, a feat not many writers achieved with such consistent acclaim. His TV drama, Marty, didn't just win him an Academy Award, it also clinched the grand prize at the Cannes Film Festival.
Which is huge. That's a huge achievement, showcasing his ability to craft stories that resonated across different mediums and, international audiences.
Indeed. He continued that success with other acclaimed films like The Bachelor Party, The Goddess, Middle of the Night, The Americanization of Emily, and perhaps most famously, Network.
Right, and for the latter two, he won 2 more Academy Awards, bringing his total to 3. This wasn't just a skilled writer, he was a master storyteller who could delve into the human condition with sharp wit, profound insight, and a unique ability to capture the anxieties and transformations of his time.
With that incredible talent as a backdrop, Chayefsky sets the stage for Altered States as a truly multi-layered narrative. Our sources present it as, first, the ultimate horror story. A scientist's terrifying experiment to find the origins of consciousness, leading to what's described as the supreme moment of terror at the beginning of life.
Wow, that phrase alone conjures such primal dread.
Then it's also presented as a love story, which, given the subject matter, might seem like a surprising counterpoint. It's the story of a man learning that love is the greatest of all acts of faith.
And that juxtaposition of scientific terror and profound human connection is absolutely central to the novel's power and its ultimate message, I think.
And beyond those two powerful layers, it's framed as a novel of exploration and investigation into other states of consciousness and what are called the unimaginable kingdoms of the mind. For the scientist Edward Jessup, much like for Chayefsky the novelist, these are framed as the new frontiers of truth, beyond which anything can happen.
Finally, it's touted as a stunning entertainment, an astounding trip into the unknown. This implies that while it's deeply philosophical and scientific, it's also designed to be a captivating, immersive experience for the reader, pulling you into its radical ideas without ever feeling like a dry academic text.
Yeah, it really captures that aha moment our listeners are looking for, mixing entertainment with profound insight.
What's truly remarkable and speaks to the profound depth of this deep dive into the human mind is Chayefsky's implied method, revealed in the acknowledgments. He talks about seeking out and personal talking to dozens of scientists across an astonishing array of disciplines.
Yeah, we're talking anthropology, endocrinology, psychophysiology, parapsychology, human genetics, biophysics, and theoretical physics. The whole gamut, really.
This commitment to extensive research highlights the sheer scientific rigor that underpins a seemingly fantastical narrative. Chayefsky wasn't simply inventing a wild story. He was deeply immersing himself in the cutting edge of scientific thought, attempting to ground his imaginative leaps in real-world hypotheses.
And he specifically mentions how he believes art, science, religion, and philosophy are all racing toward some common point of understanding. Which raises a fascinating question for us to ponder. What does it mean for our understanding of reality when these seemingly disparate fields begin to converge, suggesting a unified underlying truth?
Exactly. So our journey into altered states of consciousness begins with Edward Jessup, a psychophysiologist who started his isolation studies in Bethesda, Maryland in 1965, almost by accident.
Right. Jessup, by his own admission, considered isolation studies pretty flaky stuff and initially saw himself as a straight, lab-oriented scientist. His original intention was actually to work in hemispheric dominance, hoping to join a research group at the University of California.
But then an unexpected door opened. He was given the chance to do his doctorate under Gregory Hayworth, who is the head of behavioral services for NASA. At the time, NASA was deeply interested in understanding the psychological states of astronauts in confined spaces for long periods. Imagine the isolation of a space capsule on a multi-year mission.
And, perhaps predictably for a major government agency, they were providing grants by the bushelful. So this unexpected turn in funding and opportunity led Jessup directly to the isolation tank.
Let's visualize this initial isolation tank set up at the National Institutes of Health. It was a humble, almost stark contraption, described as a coffin-like bathtub made of plywood, lined with aluminum measuring 8 by 8 by 10 feet.
And it was half filled with a 10% magnesium sulfate solution that's common Epsom salts, specifically to increase buoyancy, making it easier to float effortlessly.
And the water was heated precisely to 93 degrees Arab, which is the temperature at which a float's body feels minimal gravity. The goal was to strip away as much external sensation as possible, creating a completely neutral environment.
In these early experiments in 1965, daily volunteers from Andrews Air Force Base would come in, undergo blood tests, and be wired to EEG and EKG equipment to monitor heart rate, pulse, blood pressure, and galvanic skin response.
Ew.
This sounds meticulously controlled, deeply scientific, yet also quite unnerving, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The findings from these early experiments were quite fascinating. Only 5 out of 62 subjects showed anxiety and dropped out, which is a surprisingly low number given the intense sensory deprivation. The others reported experiences ranging from pleasant to exhilarating.
Yeah, it seemed that depriving external stimuli simply triggered a whole new set of internal stimuli. All subjects reported early disturbance in temporal and spatial orientation. The sense of confinement disappeared quickly, and they couldn't tell if they'd been in the tank for 10 minutes or 2 hours. This profound distortion of time is a recurring theme.
Many also reported intense sensory excitement, especially sexual fantasy, with several even achieving orgasm. 49 subjects reported vivid hallucinatory experiences, and almost all reported increased clarity of mental processes and even new patterns of thinking.
Right. Their thinking, which was normally linear and logical, became holistic and patterned. Some were able to instantly solve complicated algebra problems that would ordinarily have required a step-by-step solution. This hints at a different mode of cognition, one that transcends our usual processing.
What's perhaps most intriguing about the physiological effects was a deep sense of rest and refreshed energy. This was supported by the electroencephalographic evidence. Within minutes, their brainwave patterns showed well-organized alpha waves, which are associated with a relaxed, wakeful state.
These then increased in amplitude, and at a 30-minute mark, rhythmical waves appeared, followed by rhythmical theta trains. This specific EEG pattern was startlingly similar to that of Zen priests in meditation.
That connection is incredibly thought-provoking. It absolutely is. This similarity to Zen meditation practices suggests a common pathway to altered consciousness, implying that deep introspection and sensory deprivation might tap into similar profound brain states across vastly different cultural and spiritual practices.
It raises a significant question. Are these physiological changes the cause or effect of the altered consciousness? Does the deprivation induce a spiritual state, or does accessing that state change the brain?
A real chicken and egg problem. So, on November 19th, 1965, Jessup decided to take his first personal dive. His NASA experiments were concluded, and the tank was free. He entered at 11:30 a.m., stripped, climbed in, and pulled the hinged lid over himself.
His initial sensations were quite physical and mundane. He worried his head would sink, water got into his ears, his fingers and toes began to wrinkle. He was conscious of the intense confinement and was startled by the utter blackness, a relentless, palpable silence that made him feel utterly alone and even a little fearful, worried no one knew he was there.
But then came the profound transition to an altered state. The fear subsided. He became abruptly aware of seeing in the utter blackness. In fact, there was a great deal of light, almost a radiance. The wooden grains of the tank walls took on living forms.
He saw vivid, almost surreal images. A green Veronica, vast surreal landscapes, brilliantly white beaches with his body outlined in ink. It sounds like a deeply personal and transformative visual experience.
What's truly fascinating here is that despite the vivid hallucinatory experience, he somehow retained rational awareness. He thought to himself, "My God, I'm hallucinating. I am Edward Jessup lying naked in an isolation tank in Bethesda, Maryland."
He even wondered about the precise physiological activities causing it. This self-awareness within a hallucination is a curious contradiction. How could his rational self observe these profound, seemingly external visions if both were products of his own brain?
That's the central paradox, and his visions became even more personal, almost a direct reflection of his scientific mind. A medical textbook page popped up in his mind stating, "Visual displays are caused by spontaneous excitation of parts of the brain."
This infuriated him. He reacted with rage, mentally shouting, "What parts of the brain? What the hell are you talking about?" Then images of sleeping neurons appeared, implying stored neurons, stored in some bank of our mental computers, perceptions picked up somewhere in life and selectively filtered out of our rational consciousness, the stuff of dreams.
What Jessup observed was that his imagery was primarily physiological, reflecting his scientific work. He felt as though he was looking at his own brain now, a profound act of self-observation. This highlights how our internal experiences can be profoundly shaped by our dominant cognitive frameworks and obsessions.
And this introspection then escalated into deeply personal sexual imagery. First, a swollen vagina, then a faceless yet somehow beautiful young woman writhing in sexual exuberance on the white beach. He felt a trembling apprehension and a violent surge of desire, suggesting these internal states were intensely real and visceral.
After an intense erotic hallucination involving sexual rapture, he willed himself out of the deep reverie and easily opened the lid. He felt very pleased with himself, singularly voluptuous.
And he thought he'd been in the tank for a short time, perhaps minutes, but his watch revealed it was 5:43 p.m. He had been in the tank for more than 6 hours. The distortion of time was truly extraordinary, a common element in deep altered states.
So Jessup's individual experience validated and expanded upon the earlier group findings. He confirmed the profound impact of sensory deprivation on consciousness, leading to vivid, personally tailored hallucinations and extreme temporal distortions, all while paradoxically retaining a degree of self-awareness.
It's a testament to the mind's incredible capacity to generate internal worlds when external input is removed. Moving forward to 1967, our narrative introduces Emily Jessup, née Emily Decter, a 24-year-old physical anthropologist doing postgraduate work in Columbia.
Right. She met Edward Jessup, then 28, a psychophysiologist teaching at Cornell Medical College at a party of young intellectuals in New York City. Emily found Jessup very attractive in a monkish way, though he was shy and had almost nothing to say, a curious contrast to his internal intensity.
Interestingly, a mutual friend, pharmacologist Arthur Rosenberg, gave Emily a rather blunt assessment of Jessup, describing him as an arrogant, high-handed prick, a little bonkers, but you're absolutely brilliant.
Which is quite the introduction. Rosenberg's endorsement of Jessup's work was strong, calling his studies in sensory deprivation and isolation tanks the only serious work in the field, and specifically highlighting Jessup's development of a quantifiable methodology for studying interior experiences.
He was clearly the hottest physiologist in town, with offers from Harvard, Michigan, and Stanford.
Emily's persistence, despite his shyness, led to a coffee shop discussion where Jessup finally opened up. He and Rosenberg were collaborating on toxic metabolite stuff with a psychiatrist named Hobart at Payne Whitney, trying to find maverick substances specific to schizophrenia.
But Jessup, ever the critical scientist, was skeptical of reducing a complex condition like schizophrenia to a single etiologic agent.
Their true common ground and the enduring basis for Jessup's fascination was their shared interest in isolation tanks. Jessup followed Rosenberg to Cornell Medical College in 1966, specifically because it had an isolation tank in the basement. They quickly became old pros, taking turns in the tank every Wednesday night, pushing the boundaries of their self-experimentation.
What's particularly telling about Jessup's scientific approach is his critique of existing research into inner and other consciousness, which he felt was improperly explored. He was struck by the similarity between tank experiences and the psychotomimetic effects of LSD.
However, he found LSD research problematic. Rosenberg had studied LSD effects on schizophrenics back in 1964, but Jessup noted the anarchically variable experiences of LSD subjects, making findings difficult to repeat or validate scientifically. This variability was anathema to his quest for quantifiable truth.
And if we consider the broader cultural context of the 1960s, Jessup saw much of the existing isolation and sense deprivation work as brainwashing studies funded by the Army post-Korean War. He found the literature often radical stuff, polemical, and tinged by Timothy Leary messianism.
Right, it tended to attack establishment psychology and exalt the irrational and intuitive over the rational and quantifiable. For a scientist like Jessup, this lacked the rigor he demanded.
So what Jessup believed was desperately needed was a quantifiable methodology to study other consciousnesses under controlled conditions. This became his driving scientific quest.
For him, the isolation tank offered crucial advantages over psychedelic drugs and hypnosis as a research tool.
Precisely. Unlike psychedelic drugs, a subject in the isolation tank retains volition and mental clarity, allowing for more controlled observation. And, crucially, the tank experience can be controlled, even programmed, by either the subject himself or the observer-experimenter.
You could actually determine what inner space you want to get to. Furthermore, unlike hypnosis, the subject is constantly aware. This degree of control and conscious participation was vital to Jessup's scientific approach, allowing him to systematically explore these internal states.
He described their programmed tank trips to Emily, designed to explore different inner spaces. One was a kind of ontogenetic dematuration, which he explained as programming oneself back into your mother's womb and beyond that to the first cell of your conception.
The goal being to re-experience the explosion of your own birth and unfold all the layers of yourself back into the original cell. Jessup and Rosenberg had reportedly replicated this, suggesting a deep, almost biological memory.
Then there was a trip that was right down Emily's alley as an anthropologist, protohuman regression. This involved programming oneself back through collapsing veils of time into the fossilized bones of a proto-human creature back into Pleistocene space to essentially go hunkering along the savannas of primeval Africa.
Which really begins to blur the lines between psychological experience, deep memory, and the very concept of biological time.
The method to achieve this profound state was fascinating. The first 30 to 60 minutes were spent achieving a state of suspension, letting the body unfold into gravitylessness, separating body consciousness from mind. The body essentially becomes a separate consciousness in itself, slowly subsiding from rational awareness.
Until silence is utterly soundless and the darkness utterly black and the sensed confinement is spaceless and time disappears and all is one. This, Jessup called a moment of total centeredness, lacking intelligence or will and consisting of nothing but essence.
He believed this was the deepest point of the deep dive into the self.
This is a profound concept. It suggests that by stripping away all external stimuli, one might reach a core, essential state of being, a consciousness beyond the everyday, a state deeply connected to a universal or primordial self. It mirrors ancient meditative practices aiming for pure awareness.
Shifting focus to Jessup's character, Emily observed he was driven from within by some Arctic passion. He revealed a remarkable childhood experience. At age 9, he saw visions, angels and saints, even Christ, and spoke in voices.
Wow. A small Pentecostal church in South Yonkers actually made a cult object of him, believing him to be divinely touched.
His parents, however, were militant secularists. His mother, a clinical psychologist, his father, an aeronautical engineer. They were utterly appalled by these visions and had him see every psychiatrist in Westchester County.
This early conflict between his innate spiritual or visionary experiences and his parents' rigid scientific skepticism deeply shaped his later obsessions and his relentless pursuit of a godless truth.
The catalyst for his dramatic loss of faith, and simultaneously, the ignition for his lifelong scientific quest was truly impactful. At age 15, he told his father he would apply to divinity school, but his father's protracted and painful death from cancer caused him to lose faith dramatically.
He heard his dying father desperately trying to say something, a soft hiss of a word. Terrible, terrible.
This traumatic experience led Jessup to a profound and, for him, terrible truth. So the purpose of all our suffering was just more suffering. By dinner time that day, he had dispensed with God altogether and never saw another vision.
And this becomes the core motivation for his scientific quest. A search for an ultimate, immutable truth, a godless truth, that could explain the seemingly meaningless horror of existence and provide answers where faith had failed him.
Emily often found him difficult, even downright uncivil, because he simply didn't understand anything that didn't pertain to his work. He had minimal interest in art, politics, sports, or people as such, and ignored academic intrigues.
His work was the most intimate part of him. He rarely talked about it and was intensely competitive with others in his field. Emily knew she was special because he talked to her, which, for him, was the only real expression of his feelings for her.
It raises a fascinating question. Can true genius exist without a connection to the broader human experience? He didn't understand the word love and never used it, preferring scientific explanations for their electrical affinity or communal ionization based on some Yale fellow named Burrs Lifefield's work.
He was even described as grossly exploitative in his friendships, seeing people only as useful for his work. It paints a picture of a mind brilliant in its focus, but almost inhuman in its detachment.
Yet, Emily believed his genius was why she loved him. He was expected to make a big splash someday and win a Nobel Prize. His mind was extraordinary if monomaniacal, with an astonishing ability to absorb the most esoteric information and a merciless gift to finding the defective links in another scientist's reasoning.
But even more than his intelligence, he possessed a visionary quality, vaulting into untracked areas of speculation with outrageous and poetic hypotheses. He was capable of truly paradigm-shifting thought.
Despite his intellectual prowess, he was an inconsistent lover. Their sexual experiences were often abrupt, violent episodes described as the quality of the lancing of a boil rather than serene or intimate.
Emily, a solid middle-class young woman, was startled by the shocking sensations. Though when the sex was good, it was very good, with cascades of unbridled orgasms. This further highlights the contradictory nature of his character, profoundly detached in his intellect, yet capable of intense, physical, almost primal experience.
The relationship began to unravel. Emily felt wretched and desperate, frightened of him and isolated. She confided to the Rosenbergs that he was incapable of love, an alien. She eventually forced the issue of marriage, confronting his detachment head-on.
His response was chillingly logical, devoid of any emotional warmth. He called marriage a disaster, saying he was too selfish to be a husband and a father. He admitted he would treat it as a chore, like grading papers, only doing it to get finished and done with them so I could get back to myself, to his true work.
Emily's insight into him was profound and heartbreaking. She diagnosed him as a religious freak, still looking for God's truth, any truth, even a godless truth, as long as it's ultimate, absolute, permanent, everlasting.
She then asserted a contrasting, deeply human truth. Human life doesn't have truth. We're born screaming in doubt, and we die suffocating in doubt, and human life consists of continually convincing ourselves we're alive. One of the ways we know we're alive is we love each other.
She confessed her pain. I know I'm alive right now because it hurts so goddamn much. She concluded she was never going to be anything more to you than a distraction. Pretty harsh.
Yeah. So they agreed to separate for a while, with Emily going to Nairobi for postdoc work and Jessup going to India to study yogis. Jessup, in a characteristic display of his emotional detachment, tried to feel a pain he didn't feel about the separation.
This really sets the stage for what he seeks in his experiments, an absolute, unchanging truth beyond the transient, painful nature of human emotion and connection.
But as with many great love stories, there was a brief reunion. Heartbroken in Nairobi, Emily impulsively decided to go to India to find Jessup. She found him in the Himalayas, surprisingly, doing EEG work on yogis, seemingly still pursuing altered states.
It was a simple yet profound proposal born of her desperate love. She asked, "Do you still admire me?
Yeah.
And do you still find me sexy?"
He affirmed.
And she, cutting through all his intellectualizing, said, "Okay, I'll settle for that. Let's get married." They married in Amsterdam and then settled in Boston, seemingly building a normal life.
And for a while, they truly appeared to be a model young academic couple. Emily published a widely adopted anthropology textbook, and they had two daughters, Grace in 1970 and Margaret in 1973. Jessup became a full professor, and Emily an associate professor.
A picture of stability, yet his underlying drive remained. Professionally, Jessup shifted his research focus from isolation studies, which were kind of out of fashion by the late 1960s, to long-term memory.
He began working with an endocrinologist named Mason Parrish on ACTH47, which is a small chain of amino acids involved in printing short-term memory. This shift seems conventional, but it's a prelude to something far more radical. Here's where a truly serendipitous discovery occurred for Parrish, which would profoundly change Jessup's path. Parrish consulted on a stroke patient with Cushing's syndrome at the Massachusetts General Hospital. The patient, who was Irish and had never left Boston, inexplicably babbled in a Slovenian dialect.
Wow. CAT scans showed lesions in the anterior hippocampus and cingulate gyrus parts of the limbic system, which is the earliest, most primitive part of the forebrain, found even in primitive animals like crocodiles.
This utterly intrigued Jessup, who immediately suspected prenatal recall, a memory from before birth. He conducted a retrospective study of stroke and head trauma patients at Massachusetts General from the previous 10 years, finding a better-than-random incidence of unusual and inexplicable recall.
This raised a profound question. Could the limbic system, this ancient part of our brain, truly hold ancestral memories, echoes of our evolutionary past?
He and a colleague, Milton Mitgang from Psychophysiology, found that while short-term memory was unimpaired by limbic lesions, there was significant memory decay, suggesting the limbic system does have some effect on laying down long-term memory, perhaps linking it to these ancient, deeper memories.
Jessup wanted to stimulate these areas but couldn't use microelectrodes on humans. So they secured a $65,000 grant and went to work on rats, showing that the compound they were studying localized heavily in the limbic system.
This is where the narrative pivots dramatically from the seemingly stable family life and conventional research back to Jessup's core obsession. His quest for other consciousnesses reignited in a new and terrifying way, now with a biological, pharmacological angle.
In 1975, Jessup revealed to Rosenberg that he was going to Mexico with a botanist named Echeverria from the University of Mexico. Their destination: the Hinchi Indians, an isolated tribe in central Mexico near San Luis Potosi who still practiced ancient Toltec rituals, sacred mushroom ceremonies.
They reportedly used a hallucinatory compound that's supposed to evoke a common experience for all users. Interesting if true.
Rosenberg's reaction was telling. "You're still screwing around with altered consciousness, I see." Jessup admitted he hadn't used an isolation tank in 5 or 6 years, indicating his focus had shifted from sensory deprivation to pharmacological induction, actively seeking external compounds to unlock internal states.
The expedition to the sacred mushroom fields was intense and arduous. Jessup and Echeverria joined 800 Hinchi Indians on a 3-week trek. They collected plants like Siniquidche and Amanita muscaria mushrooms, which Echeverria described as a very powerful psychedelic and a little dangerous, containing belladonna alkaloids like atropine and scopolamine.
The Siniquidche was said to produce a dream from which one awoke to find oneself in another state of being. The plants and mushrooms were processed into powders, then stored in sealed gourds for a year to get moldy, a specific, almost ritualistic preparation that hinted at ancient knowledge.
The smoking ritual itself was exclusive and deeply ceremonial, involving only 5 men, Los Escogidos, and the old brujo, or shaman. Jessup, in his relentless pursuit of knowledge, agreed to participate.
What's absolutely startling here is the brujo's sudden ritualistic act. He slashed Jessup's hand with a hunting knife, catching his blood in a pot with the mushroom plant mixture. Jessup, who had read Castaneda and should have expected indigenous ritual, was still utterly taken aback. He didn't, and he screamed.
The brujo then delivered a chilling prophecy, translated by Echeverria, stating that the substance would bring your first soul back. He described the experience Jessup would undergo. You will be sick, then you will shoot into void, you will see a spot. The spot will become a streak. This is the crack between the nothing. Out of this, nothing will come your unborn soul.
Jessup noted the uncanny similarity to Tibetan yogic descriptions, particularly the concept of the first soul being unborn stuff, a primal consciousness.
Jessup's hallucinatory experience began immediately after smoking the mixture, following a bout of nausea. The clearing he was in physically disappeared, attenuating to a pinpoint miles below. Then a slit, a jagged slit, a crack, what he instantly recognized as the crack between the nothing.
This direct alignment with the Brujo's prophecy must have been profoundly unsettling, even for a secular scientist.
And it escalated into something cosmic. The slit unfolded into flowing, surf-like emanations of light, blinding like original illumination. Jessup felt himself encompassed entirely within it and became a brilliant white spot. This effulgent whiteness stretched to infinity.
A column of halos rose, evolving into a golden helix filled with pulsating light like a microscopic view of holy chromosomes. He even heard a high-pitched scream of exultancy, which felt distinct from a typical psychedelic hallucination, suggesting a primordial, even creation-like journey.
Then, a brownish figure, a molten mass of substance with dissolving and extruding limbs, emerged from the original pin spot, which was now stark black. It grew huger and huger, becoming redder than golden.
Jessup recalled that gold is the color for the archaic age in the yogic cycle, and red for the magic age. He watched this extraordinary, terrifying image with no fear, only awe. It suggests not just internal visions, but a journey through evolutionary or cosmic time.
Here's where it gets truly horrifying and mind-bending. A large lizard, colored exuberantly yellow, the color of the mythic age, flitted across the white expanse and was engulfed by the flaming molten substance, ripped with a sickening scream of bone and muscle and devoured.
Jessup watched with a benign smile. The substance then engulfed him, painlessly and gently, infusing him with endless power, catapulting him into infinity. He called it the most exhilarating moment of his life.
The hallucinatory part lasted about an hour. He then found himself scratched in bushes. His watch showed 8:19 p.m., meaning the whole event lasted over an hour and a half from entering the tank. But the terrifying physical reality of the hallucination was yet to fully sink in for him.
The next day, the Brujo asked if Jessup had the predicted experience and then, without Jessup saying a word about it, chillingly said, "You ate a lizard." Jessup was startled and asked how he knew.
The Brujo simply replied, "Because I saw you eat the lizard. We all saw you eat the lizard." Jessup, incredulous, questioned if the Brujo had somehow entered his dream, but the Brujo, like small children, didn't distinguish dreams from external reality.
The Brujo then led Jessup and Echeverria to the bushes, where Jessup had reappeared, revealing the half-eaten remains of a large, spine-crested iguana lizard whose limbs had been wrenched out of their sockets. Echeverria was sick on the spot.
Echeverria confirmed Jessup had indeed gone into the bushes, and there had been animal noises, snarls, and growls and screams, sounding like two dogs fighting. Jessup had been gone 20 minutes before returning and falling asleep.
Despite the undeniable physical evidence, Jessup's deeply rational, skeptical mind dismissed it as a trick. He argued that you don't find iguanas in the highlands of Mexico, and the lizard must have been devoured by dogs, its remains coincidentally placed.
He was still desperate to take some of the mixture back to Boston for scientific analysis, a clear sign of his scientific mind attempting to rationalize what seemed to be a physical impossibility, rather than confronting the true horror.
This is a truly pivotal moment. Jessup, the man who seeks absolute, godless truth, is confronted with an undeniable physical manifestation of his internal experience, a phenomenon that utterly defies rational explanation.
Yet his established scientific framework cannot contain it. He dismisses the impossible physical evidence in favor of maintaining his rational skepticism, even as he's driven to analyze the drug further. It shows the tension between what we believe and what we witness.
Back in Boston in October 1975, Rosenberg had synthesized the hallucinogenic mixture Jessup brought back from Mexico. Mason Parrish, the endocrinologist who had worked with Jessup on memory, reconnected with them and observed Jessup's trip with the Mexican drug.
Parrish noted Jessup's symptoms, including vomiting, which was common with the drug, followed by a rapid transition into a void. Rosenberg explained their shared, repeatable hallucinations. Shooting into a void, just nothing everywhere, a big white nothing.
Then a crack appears, and out of the crack comes a cell-like structure with a boiling nuclear core. Jessup called it the incarnated id, our original nuclear self, boding with our most primal hungers. This id comes at you on fire, an inferno.
Despite the frightening visual, it produced a terrific beatific feeling. This is the primordial self, the essence he was searching for.
Physiologically, Jessup noted picking up abnormally excessive levels of stress-related biochemicals, indicating an extreme physiological response. Those baseline values were normal. Crucially, EEG readings went straight to theta in less than a minute.
Theta waves are typically associated with deep relaxation, meditation, and REM sleep. Jessup was convinced the compound went straight to the limbic system, which would be pretty weird, as most psychoactives wind up in the liver or kidney.
To investigate this specific localization, Parrish joined in. They injected rats with a radioactively labeled compound. Autopsies showed high activity in the brain, confirming it's all in the brain.
Histofluorescent techniques then confirmed localization specifically in the limbic system, particularly the hippocampus, which is strongly related to theta waves. The compound was even found in the chromosomes, suggesting DNA binding, though no significant alteration was immediately detected.
This is a huge leap, a drug interacting directly with our genetic material, tied to our deepest, most ancient brain structures. It points to a direct biological pathway for these altered states.
Parrish, however, became increasingly concerned about Jessup's relentless self-experimentation, fearing cancer and irreversible damage due to the drug's fantastic staying powers and potential toxic levels. Jessup had already taken 2-3 grams, a significant amount.
Rosenberg, despite Parrish's growing protests, was equally curious, driven by the scientific potential. He reasoned that the hippocampus's relation to theta waves and the drug's profound effect on time perception meant the substance may have some kind of time link.
He hypothesized the limbic system just might be the seat of our deepest prenatal recall, the reservoir of those evolutionary memories Jessup sought. He wanted to see what happened if Jessup took another 200 milligram in the isolation tank and programmed himself into early time, dismissing the risk as another 200 milligrams isn't going to kill him.
Parrish, fearing Jessup's increasingly irresponsible behavior and the severe ethical repercussions of such human experimentation without proper oversight, simply refused to participate further in the tank experiment. But Jessup's obsession was relentless, pushing him past all conventional boundaries.
The stage was set for the unthinkable. Days before the planned tank experiment in January 1976, Jessup experienced a spontaneous, terrifying physical transformation at home. This was no longer just a hallucination, it was a profound physical change.
The symptoms were horrifyingly vivid and rapid. Impressions of small animals crawling on him, his body swelling and contorting, an arm briefly shriveling to a rat's paw, feet becoming webbed, then furless proto-human feet. His skull ached, bones reassembling, his chest surging, then shrinking.
And he was completely awake, the images eidetic and undreamlike, meaning they were as real as external reality.
He made his way to the bathroom, where he saw disjunctive evolutionary images of himself flickering. Hominid and proto-human. Even a delicately fingered insect-eating, lemur-like animal in the mirror. The whole event lasted only 30 seconds, and then he was back to normal.
This spontaneous waking and physical transformation was utterly unprecedented and defied all known biological laws. What does it mean when the mind can literally reshape the body?
Undeterred, Jessup and Rosenberg proceeded with the isolation tank experiment on January 7, 1976. This time, the tank was smaller, more coffin-like than previous ones with a hinged lid.
Parrish, despite his reluctance, feeling a deep sense of impending trouble, even horror, went anyway. They had an EEG machine, polygraph, and video set up to record every detail. Jessup, after taking 200 milligrams of the compound, entered the tank, appearing as a faint, almost imperceptible, shimmering white blob like a huge dead fish, achieving centeredness at 4.47 p.m.
After initial disjointed images of beetles, maggots, and birds, Jessup's voice abruptly changed. It became croaking grunts, a series of clicking sounds, and then some lip-smacking sounds. This was the profound vocal shift, signaling a deeper regression than ever before.
And then, at 8:46 p.m., Jessup emerged from the tank. He was no longer recognizably human. He was a finely furred creature, barely 4 feet tall, bipedal if perhaps a bit sloping in the shoulders, with definable human features except for a massive projecting ridge of bone above his eyebrows and a prognathic, chinless jaw, a somewhat flattened skull, a low brow.
His furred arms just a bit too long and his furred legs just a bit too short, retaining still a prehensile simian quality. Yeah, he could not talk, only vocalize. The regression was undeniably terrifyingly physical.
In his transformed state, driven by his scientific imperative even in this primal form, Jessup furiously scrawled demands for buccal smear, karyotype, blood samples to Goodman and Sarich labs, and pictures of my neck and a whole series of films now, before I reconstitute.
He was demanding scientific proof of his own incredible transformation, a testament to his ingrained scientific rigor, even as his very form dissolved.
Parrish immediately examined him. No masses, brutes, or papedema, surprisingly. Jessup, once his voice returned, insisted his vocalizations were the same damn noises I made during the hallucinatory experience, and called the transformation time-space fallout.
At the hospital, X-rays further confirmed the physical changes. An elevated hyoid bone, broadened base of the tongue, and shorter pharyngeal space than is normally found. The radiologist, clearly shocked, exclaimed, "This guy's a fucking gorilla."
Here's a chilling callback to the Mexico trip that Parrish vividly remembered. He, worried Jessup was cracking up, explicitly told Rosenberg not to mention the blood on Jessup's face when he emerged, fearing Jessup would claim it was from eating that goat in his hallucination.
Parrish suspected a seizure, but Jessup, regaining his voice, insisted he had programmed myself into latter tertiary space and physically entered my own hallucination, briefly retaining physical vestiges of it. He hypothesized it was a quantum thing or exotic relativistic physics.
He claimed his vocalizations were the first formations of human speech, and that he had reverted to some proto-human state.
Parrish, enraged by Jessup's Kabbalistic, quantum frigging limbo state dumb mumbo-jumbo, stormed off, throwing Jessup's bloodied robe and shirt into an incinerator, desperate to destroy the evidence of something so impossible.
The scientific establishment, even represented by a close friend, could not process this. It highlights a critical point in the narrative where scientific observation collides with phenomena that defy existing paradigms. Parrish's reaction, his rage, and dismissal highlight the human tendency to reject what cannot be explained within our current understanding.
Emily and the girls returned from Africa in April 1976, where Emily had been studying baboon call systems on the Serengeti, witnessing predation and rudimentary communication among baboons. Jessup greeted them with uncharacteristic exuberance and tears, suggesting a profound shift in his emotional state, perhaps due to the profound events he'd undergone.
Emily surmised that if baboons needed meat eating, they might have developed tool use and language, and wanted to hear Jessup's tapes of his aphasic vocalizations, unknowingly linking her own research directly to his bizarre transformation.
Emily quickly learned of Jessup's genetic regression incident via a letter from Parrish, who believed Jessup had an incipient neoplastic process, essentially cancer like leukemia or lymphoma.
Jessup was furious and paranoid, denying cancer, convinced that other scientists, Lowenstein at UCal Irvine, Guy at King's Cambridge, would steal his discoveries if they learned he had affected genetic change through manipulation of consciousness.
He had actually, and somewhat prematurely, published the hard data and drug analysis in PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, calling it premature, but necessary to get it on record before others can claim it. Emily, reading it, called the paper wild and ridiculous.
What's truly astonishing, and the core of the physical evidence, is Jessup's confirmation that the blood tests from Goodman and Sarich labs showed cellular immune systems tests revealed characteristics of AB and CEP blood group systems, which are definitively non-human characteristics.
But crucially, they also picked up XG antigens, which are specific to man, and the chromosomal count was 48, which is non-human, with 26% chromatin positive and a non-human karyotype structure. Yet he completely reconstituted to normal human form and test results within 4 hours.
This wasn't a trick. The evidence suggests a true, albeit temporary, biological shift. Jessup's unwavering conviction was that this was literal physical regression, muscles, bones, chromosomes, and genes, a direct transformation of biological structures.
He proposed they were penetrating time barriers, calling it a quantum thing, a singularity, a physical event that is out of context of all known theory, like a black hole. He was pushing the boundaries of physics itself.
He speculated the drug triggered DNA alterations, activating very old genes, with DNA bases lighting up like a pinball machine, almost as if his entire evolutionary code was being switched on. He was convinced the regression was triggered by an act of consciousness.
He declared, "I entered another consciousness. I became another self, a more primitive self, and the drug in some way triggered the externalization of that other, more primitive self." This raises a profound question. Is consciousness the ultimate driver of physical reality, capable of literally rewriting our biology?
The clash of perspectives was stark, a true battle between worldviews. Jessup accused Emily, Arthur, and Mason of being hung up on time and space, arguing they are not inviolable, they do not exist in themselves.
He posited that there is no time and space in mathematics. There is no time in atomic physics or in intergalactic space. He believed we have millions and millions of years stored away in that computer bank we call our minds. We've got trillions of dormant genes in us, our whole evolutionary past. Perhaps I've tapped into that.
His primary goal, therefore, was to repeat the experiment, confirm it, verify it. with other responsible scientists for consensual validation. If true, it would explode frontiers across the whole panoply of science, demonstrating a whole new force in nature, an achievement comparable to Newton, Darwin, Einstein.
He also warned Emily not to tell anyone, citing scientists' murderous thirst for immortality and their willingness to perjure, suborn, cheat, steal, swindle, and even kill to get their names in the textbooks or to be standing up there in Stockholm.
It's a dark commentary on the competitive, sometimes ruthless nature of scientific discovery.
Emily, despite her initial skepticism and Parrish's relentless sanity, felt a swift, dizzying feeling of disintegration in her own understanding of reality and began to believe Jessup's grotesque, demented, incredible story. She became terrified, petrified by the implications.
She begged him not to repeat the experiment, concerned about irreversible genetic damage that might leave him permanently altered.
But Jessup's obsession was absolute, overriding all caution. He insisted they must know if it happened and why, calling it an inexplicable singularity that could only be understood by re-experiencing it.
He believed he was beyond mass and matter here, beyond even energy. We're back before the first molecule, back before the first second of time. What we're back to is the first thought, the first conscious thought, the pure consciousness of creation. He reassured her he had always reconstituted, and nothing irreversible is going to happen.
In an astounding act of love and commitment, Emily, realizing she was no less obsessed with understanding in this situation, conceded and asked him to stay the night, needing a little love and a little reassurance in the face of such profound uncertainty.
It speaks to the deep, complex bond between them. Jessup even met with physicists at MIT through Parrish, seeking explanations outside of biology. Parrish, with a dry wit, humorously warned Jessup about the certifiable screwball nature of quantum mechanicians and high-energy physicists.
Citing an anecdote about a mathematician breeding mathematical theorems to produce superior ones, implying these are fields where normal rules don't apply.
Yet, surprisingly, the physicists Willard Sproul, a quantum mechanician, Goddard, a biophysicist, Murdoch, a theoretical physicist, and Garrett Durrell, a molecular biologist, were remarkably open to Jessup's story. They did not think the idea of a man turning into an ape off the wall at all, at least not beyond the scope of speculation.
They were keen to observe if he repeated it, but Jessup decided against it for now, wanting more hard evidence before exposing himself to potential ridicule from the broader scientific community.
They offered fascinating explanations in quantum terms. Goddard suggested Jessup effected slight alterations in his energy states, creating a primordial soup of proteins that recombined at a preferred energy level, effectively zipping through a forbidden region between the states.
He spoke of reducing uncertainty and energy to zero to allow for tunneling through time. This means, at a fundamental level, Jessup's body was becoming as fluid and changeable as subatomic particles.
Murdoch brought up Gödel's concept of time as huge closed rings and the possibility of returning to the same time and structure in a Gödel universe via controlled acceleration in spacetime.
This is truly where science fiction meets theoretical physics, suggesting that traversing time, or at least accessing different points in it, could be possible on a fundamental, perhaps even conscious level.
Jessup, taking it even further, believed consciousness itself was a cosmic, perhaps the cosmic force, the original creative force that predates the universe and its physical forces. He believed it was phenomenologically available, it could be reached, tapped into, manipulated.
He thought he had found the ultimate force. I've found the final truth, and could demonstrably quantify it. This speaks to his lifelong quest for an absolute truth, a godless truth, which he now believed he had found in consciousness itself, a force capable of shaping reality.
This is an extraordinary claim that bridges the gap between spirituality and hard science. If consciousness itself is a fundamental force, then Jessup is not just observing. He is interacting with the very essence of creation, giving his scientific pursuits an almost divine ambition.
And so, the inevitable final experiment began. On a befittingly Gothic night, with heavy rain, lightning, and thunder on April 30, Parrish, Rosenberg, Emily, and Jessup gathered in the isolation tank room.
They brought extensive equipment, an examining table, IV stand, biopsy kit, Nikon camera, videotape setup, EEG, and more, preparing for the most extreme possible outcome. Rosenberg even prepared a 750 milligram bolus of sodium amytal, a powerful sedative, and planned an emittal drip if push comes to shove, indicating their awareness of the severe risks.
The vigil began after Jessup took 200 milligrams of the compound and entered the tank. They waited for hours, tense and silent in the dimly lit room, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil within. Emily expressed extreme fear, questioning their actions. We're screwing around with this whole genetic structure. I think we ought to stop this.
The stakes for her were higher than ever, risking not just a discovery but the complete dissolution of the man she loved. Just before 9:30 p.m., the second, more terrifying transformation began. Parrish looked into the tank and saw a somewhat gorilla-like face, its skin a black and shining hide with a heavy simian ridge. The eyes, though closed, were more human than ape-like.
The body was covered in fine fur. Parrish simply muttered, "Oh shit," as the impossible unfolded before him.
Rosenberg, now intensely excited, gabbling about multidimensional time spaces and post-Einstein relativity, conducted tests on the transformed Jessup. Parrish took tissue samples from a shaved haunch, noting his skin's black.
Rosenberg, completely swept up in the moment, excitedly proclaimed, "All bets are off, man. All bets are off. We need a whole new space-time picture. We're in blue skies, baby. Holy God." They took blood samples, EEG and polygraph tracings, a muscle biopsy, and a spinal tap, meticulously documenting every impossible detail. After 2 hours of tests near midnight, they laid the sedated, transformed Jessup on the floor. As they cleared the room and locked the door, the tank blew up. The room flared molten with heat. Where the tank had been was a pulsating mass of white substance rising out of the thin layer of boiling water, which must have been Jessup. An enormous gouge had been ripped out, showing a section of skeletal structure as if reality itself was being torn apart. Emily screamed, lunging at the locked door while Parrish and Rosenberg watched, petrified.
The pulsating mass tried to assume form, but grotesquely. Stumps of arms and legs, misshapen and misplaced, bubbled and boiled. Deformed snouts and bleeding eyes appeared and disappeared from the churning substance.
For a terrifying moment, Jessup stood, sharply outlined, his human self, hands flat at his sides, a naked white statue of a man, but instantly, horribly, turned into a baked, parched, mud-colored image with thousands of tiny cracks seeming about to disintegrate into dry dust.
Then he began to scream, so piercing and agonized it stopped Emily's hysteria. She plunged into the now cosmic black room, which pulsed with waves of force, shuddering bands of radiation. Jessup's human form appeared to be dissolving in shimmering vibrations.
His body swelled into a sphere of gas, then as suddenly collapsed. His bowels erupted into flames. He screamed in hideous terror, melting, imploding, as if he were being sucked into a black hole of his own, a complete horrifying dissolution of matter.
This is the absolute peak of terror and scientific impossibility, a truly primal moment. Jessup is confronting something beyond matter, beyond existence itself, a return to absolute nothingness.
In that moment of ultimate horror, Emily, driven by a love that transcended understanding, flung herself upon the shuddering, increasingly shapeless antimatter of her husband and embraced him. The entire cataclysmic event lasted less than 15 seconds from the explosion.
Jessup's dissolving form flowed out and enfolded themselves around his wife, and they knelt, clutching each other against the horror of human origins, a terrifying recreation.
As explosively as it began, it was over. The demented, throbbing hum of entropic forces stopped abruptly. The cosmic black receded. Emily held her, now entirely reconstituted, naked form of her husband. He was in a coma, but whole.
This incredible, harrowing experience highlights the novel's central theme, the raw, redemptive power of human connection in the face of absolute cosmic dissolution.
In the aftermath, Jessup began to recover, slowly regaining consciousness. Parrish reassured Emily that his signs were good. He would likely sleep for a day or two. But Emily was utterly shaken beyond exhaustion.
She expressed her tormented love for Jessup, crying, "Of all the goddamn men in this world, why do I have to love this one? I can't get him out of me. No matter whom I'm in bed with, I have to imagine it's him or nothing happens." Her love was an obsession, mirroring his.
Her understanding of Jessup's core drive was crystal clear and deeply insightful. "He's a truth lover, a god fucker," she said. "I was never real to him. Nothing in the human condition was ever real to him. Reality to Eddie is only that which is changeless, mutably constant."
She saw the true nature of his ultimate experiment. What happened to him tonight? That was Eddie's idea of love. That was consummation. He finally got it off with God. He finally embraced the absolute, was finally ravished by truth, and it fucking near destroyed him.
The other scientists' reactions varied wildly. Rosenberg, still on fucking fire with scientific fervor, called it one of the most fantastic instances in the history of science, comparing it to the discovery that solid matter wasn't solid.
He saw it as a cosmic singularity, where physical science just breaks down. He desperately wanted to investigate further, incubating cells, moving them through force fields, X-ray crystallography, electron spin tests to define the limits of the drug and localize the consciousness.
He even proposed testing on other human subjects, willing to use some kind of bullshit about checking this drug for renal clearance to bypass ethical restrictions driven by the sheer hunger for knowledge.
Parrish, however, was utterly horrified, accusing Rosenberg of being ready to blow up your own best friend to satisfy your shitty little need to know. This stark contrast between Rosenberg's relentless scientific drive and Parrish's ethical and emotional recoil highlights the profound moral dilemmas inherent in pushing the very boundaries of knowledge and human experience.
Jessup woke briefly, wiped out.
Yeah.
Emily knelt beside him. "I love you, Emily," he whispered, a stark, simple declaration after a lifetime of intellectualizing emotion.
The next morning, he awoke at 6 a.m. He felt a rush of solicitude for Emily and was startled to find that the sight of her had made him cry. He held her while she slept fitfully, crying from nightmares. Then he truly declared, "I love you, Emily. I love the kids. I can't tell you how much the three of you mean to me, how much I need you. I just wanted you to know that."
But then came the chilling, too-late revelation, a horrifying consequence of his ultimate pursuit. "It's too late. I don't think I can get out of it anymore." He admitted to considering burning his files as an act of exorcism, a religious act, showing a spiritual crisis.
Emily, though unsettled by his religious framing, challenged him, saying he couldn't stop exploring, that it was the way he was. "You have opened one of the great black boxes of life, and nothing in this world or any other will keep you from exploring every mystery in it."
Jessup then revealed the horrifying truth of his new reality. The process was now self-perpetuating. The drug and the act of consciousness were embedded within him permanently. Any act of consciousness could kick it off.
He showed her his arm, where a bulge of protoplasmic substance was moving slowly up his arm under the skin like a mole. He heard the horrible resonating hum from the tank, a sound now inextricably linked to his internal dissolution.
In an astonishing act of faith and shared transformation, Jessup cried helplessly, his body beginning to rumble, crack, and buckle again, the process restarting. Emily screamed, "Defy it, Eddie. You made it real. You can make it unreal. If you love me, Eddie, defy it."
At that moment, Emily felt something within herself explode, a silent, painless pain of terror. As her own arm began to bulge and swell and discolor, a jagged crack appeared on her forearm. She was burning alive, losing her senses, heading to lifeless Arctic final desolation herself.
But she saw Jessup's human form reasserting itself, reaching for her. She felt an enormous surge of emotion, a remarkable joy as her consciousness connected with his. He embraced her shapeless antimatter, pulling her back.
The lunacy of illusion was over. They stood embraced in the white sunlight of their living room. Two young, living human beings. His newfound, profound love had saved him and her from utter dissolution.
So we've journeyed through the astounding tale of Edward Jessup, a man who sought the ultimate truth and found it in the most terrifying and beautiful of ways. From humble isolation tanks to ancient rituals, from seemingly impossible genetic regression to quantum leaps in his own being, his story forces us to question the very boundaries of biology, physics, and consciousness as we understand them.
Our deep dive leaves us with several profound takeaways. First, the incredible power of consciousness. Can our minds truly affect physical reality on such a fundamental, even genetic level? Jessup believed his consciousness, particularly his pure, focused will, was the ultimate trigger. What does that imply about our own mental power?
Second, the illusion of time and space. Is our perception of these dimensions just a construct of our minds, allowing for a kind of time travel through genetic memory, or even a return to a primordial, pre-existent state? The physicist's theories offer a tantalizing glimpse into how this might be possible.
Third, the very nature of truth beyond science. What happens when scientific exploration leads to phenomena that defy all known theories, pushing us into what Rosenberg called blue skies, where conventional physics simply breaks down? It challenges the very definition of what we consider real or knowable.
And perhaps most powerfully, the crucial role of human connection. In the face of overwhelming, terrifying discovery and absolute dissolution, the profound act of love emerged as the anchoring force that brought Jessup, and by extension, Emily, back from the brink of absolute nothingness.
It suggests that while the pursuit of ultimate solitary truth might lead to horrifying isolation, the true ultimate truth might be found in connection itself.
This deep dive leaves us with a potent question for you. If humanity's deepest truths are not found in the cold, hard facts of external reality, but in the terrifying, beautiful, and ultimately redemptive power of our own inner experience and our connection to one another, what does that mean for your own search for meaning and the truths you choose to live by?
Something to truly mull over. Perhaps the ultimate frontier isn't just out there, in the stars, but right here, within you, waiting to be explored.
Until next time, keep diving deep.